Hey guys, my name's Llama, and a little while back I put out a poll asking what video you guys wanted to see next, and the overwhelming victor was a TSM import guide for all of my new groups and settings for Wrath of the Lich King. And that is finally what I'm bringing out to you today. Just before we dive into this, however, I do want to make a few disclaimers. Firstly, the actual setup of what items are in what groups is still missing the odd thing here and there. I would say it's about 95% completed, but I've had some problems with a few items just getting them where they need to be. And by extension, this is set up in the way that I like to use these groups and organize in a way that makes sense to me. It is completely customizable once you've imported it, so if you do want to move things around, by all means do. This is just the way that works for me in its ultra simplistic mode. The final disclaimer that I want to bring out onto this video is that if I do sound poor, then I am apologising still for my voice quality, as I am still recovering from COVID. I am now negative, thankfully, and I would like to thank you all for your well wishes in the comments on my last video, but it is still affecting me somewhat, and my voice may not be up to scratch as a result. But enough of all that nonsense, let's dive into it with what we've done for our groups for TSM. Now, the first thing you're going to notice when we take a look at this, any of you who've seen my previous videos are going to see that all of my original groups are still here. This is something that I'm still debating changing, but these are all the groups that I've had for the longest of times now, and I have kept them as they were for all items that were pre-Wrath of the Lich King. I've simply added this group here, which is the one that you will find on the document linked in the description for importing, which is just everything Wrath of the Lich King. Now, I have arranged it like this. I'm still trialing how I actually like this to be, but giving you the basic rundown, we have our crafting materials and our items that are crafted with professions. Everything else, things like random BOEs and things like that, I've thrown into my BOEs group, but you could easily just make a BOEs group. It is just as simple as putting items in as and when you get them. And I tend to use a very basic auctioning operation of something like a minimum sale value of 95%, normal of 100 and max of 120 just on DB market value. If that sounded like nonsense to you, I do suggest going back on the channel's history and looking at any number of the guides that I've brought out on TSM in general. But those are one-off items that are not going to be all that impactful anyway. Your everyday thing is going to be in terms of crafting materials and items that you have made from your professions. So we'll start off with the crafting materials. This one I have bothered to put into some little subgroups that are mostly accurate, but this was actually some of the places where I've had some of the most issues in regards to getting items to appropriately appear on TSM and be organised appropriately. You can see that I have broken it up in ways that I know a lot of people aren't going to like. Say, for example, not having an individual group for meats, throwing some of my uncut gems into my others group. It's just how I like it. If you don't like it, by all means, if you want to make a new group, you can simply click materials, click this little plus here, and it would make you another group, name it whatever you like, and move things around accordingly. But this is how I like to have it, okay? This is what works for me. And all of these have operations that are essentially just to sell anything that I have with my default stacks operation for auctioning, which we'll go over the operations towards the end. Speaking of stacks, that links us nicely into our crafts. So in here, we have pretty much every item that can be made with a profession from Wrath of the Lich King content. Now, as you will see, the overwhelming majority of this list is just different glyphs, but I have been fairly thorough here, with the exception of setting a sort of quality restriction in that anything that's crafted early on in the expansion that's primarily only ever made for disenchanting and leveling the professions is not on this list. I have only put things on here that I think are going to have at least some degree of value. So your gem cuts, your BOE purples that you can craft, or things of that nature. Now, in this list is pretty much everything, but I have made my list primarily for the base items that I wish to sell in individuals to be present in the craft section, and anything that's going to be crafted where when I have it, I want to sell it in multiples of however many I have, is in the stacks section. You could split this up and make another section that was called ones if you prefer, but I just simply didn't bother because everything that's not stacks is ones. So if it's not in my stack section, it's going to be sold in ones by my craft section. Having a look at our operations, we're once again selling with our stacks operation, apart from the base group that will sell with our ones operation. Now, one thing that you will want to do, if you are looking at using the import directly that I've made and put in the document for you, is in terms of the mailing operations, because of course you saw that mine are selling things to my bank character. You will need to change the target character on this list here to the name of whatever character you use for banking. Mine is selling llama, so that's why it says it here. I'm assuming yours is not going to be selling llama unless you're a really big fan of the channel, at which point then just change this name here to whatever your banking character is called. More importantly is going to be your auctioning operations. Now you saw that in terms of the Wrath of the Lich King groups that I am talking about today, I only used stacks and ones. So these are fairly simple. I'll give you a quick rundown on them, and again you can change this as you would like. But my ones faction operation sells things with a 24-hour duration, never posts more than 10 of an item, always posts in a stack size of 1. Partial stacks is obviously irrelevant when you're posting in a stack of 1. I don't keep any in my bags, obviously, unless I have, say, 11 of them, in which case it would keep 1. And the most important thing is posting price. Now, I will never not have my undercut amount on any operation be anything other than 1 copper, because I don't want to collapse markets, it makes no sense. And my bid percentage is always going to be 100% of the buyout price, because I don't want people bidding on my items, I just want them to sell for the price that I set. So on here, we've got a minimum price of 90% DB market. If something's going to be regularly selling for less than this, it's an awful market to be in all honesty, and certainly not something I'd expect at the start of an expansion for new items being introduced into the game. My normal price is 110% DB market because, as a general rule of thumb, I do want to sell my items for better than the average price because it increases my profit margin, and I don't mind keeping a hold of things in order to be able to sell them for a slightly higher price. And when it comes to maximum market price, I've set it at 400%. Now, at the volatility levels that you will experience during early expansion sales, this isn't unreasonable. Things are selling all the time at 400% of their market value because the market values have not yet settled. So if you have the opportunity, why not make yourself a little bit of extra money? Now, you could set this higher if you wanted to, but it gets to a point where you are essentially just robbing people, or you are pricing yourself out of the market to where you aren't ever going to get sales. This is just what I've personally set upon as being a relatively decent amount where I make a very healthy profit and I do actually get some sales from time to time. Moving over into our stacks operation, you will see that it's once again a 24-hour duration, but this time we're looking at a post cap of 200. Now, I've gone for a stack size of 5 here because almost everything can be sold in stacks of 5s, whereas a lot of other items, you're going to have to split your stacks up into multiple groups if you want to change it to be more efficient, because if you're selling, say, stacks of 20, that's going to be great for selling cloth, but in terms of selling flasks, you're going to find it quite a bit more challenging, whereas a lot of people don't mind buying 5 flasks. While I do actually have flasks in ones, but you get the idea. Again, I allow partial stacks. It does make a difference here because with partial stacks, if you only have, say, 3 of a potion because you've got some procs or something, it will throw them up on the auction house rather than keeping them in your bag until you get 5. This works really well if you are only crafting in relatively small numbers to begin with. And then moving more importantly down into our posting price, we're going to be taking a look once again at 100% of the buyout for the bid price, because again we don't want to be selling things at a price that is below the one that we've set for our buyout. When we're having a 1 copper undercut, we have set our market minimum price at 85% for our stacks. In truth, this is just because of some issues that I had in the past in regards to getting some sales because the economy on my realm was a little bit messed up. You could easily put this at the 90 if you wanted to. Don't really recommend going below 85% because that at that point, things just aren't worth crafting. You should probably be considering getting into a different market at that point, unless, of course, you're able to craft them for just obscenely cheap. Once again, normal price of 110% and the maximum price of 400. One thing that we did skim over before is what to do when above and below minimum. So when below minimum, I have my items posting at minimum price. This is a setting that will change later on in the expansion. So when things aren't shifting as rapidly anymore, where putting them on and you're not the cheapest means there's a good chance you won't get a sale. At that point, I might keep a hold of my items rather than posting them at the minimum price. But at this point, things sell so fast that generally speaking, everything that's cheaper than my minimum price gets sold and mine sell as well. When it's above maximum, I do not mind trying to stabilize the market a little bit by putting mine down at the 400%. Because if someone's trying to sell something for 800% and I'm going to wait, I'm just going to be waiting myself out for an eternity. That market is crippled until someone does the sensible thing and brings it down to a slightly more reasonable outcome. And it also actually helps my sales, because if people set things at 1,000% and I put them on at 400, people think it's a bargain and things will sell very quickly. That's about all of that I need to show for this video in terms of the important information. If you do have any questions, by all means feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Once again, my apologies if I do not sound up to scratch, or if you've been waiting for this video slightly longer than I originally intended for having brought out. I aren't still feeling cracking, so hopefully I've still been able to get the points across that you need, but like I say, if I have failed to do so, feel free to leave a comment down below and I will do my utmost to answer any questions that you have. But for now guys, thanks for watching and I hope to see you in the next one. Laters.